Hi Stampers, welcome to today's tutorial. So to start with, you're going to need a piece of Blackberry Bliss cardstock that measures 21 by 15 centimeters, and then you're going to fold that in half and crisp that fold down with your bone folder, and you're going to set that aside. The next thing you're going to need is some scrap Whisper White cardstock and your painted Blooms stamp set, and we're going to stamp this 3 times onto our scrap piece of Whisper White cardstock. And to do that, I'm going to use my Stazon ink because we're going to do some blender pens with it, so we need to watercolour. So Stazon ink is the best ink to use when you're utilising your blender pens. So we're just going to stamp this 3 times. So here's my image here, and I'm going to colour this in using my blender pen. And I'm going to use my Blushing Bright Classic Ink. Now to get the ink in, I'm just going to push on the lid here and then open up my ink pad, and you can see some ink pooling right there in the bottom. So I've got my blender pen here. I'm just going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to pick up my ink. So I'm just going to pick up a bit of ink, and I'm just going to colour one petal at a time. So I'm going to start at the bottom and just in a circular motion, it's going to go from bottom to top. Now if you need more ink, simply just go back to the ink and keep adding colour. So when using your blender pens, I find it easy to use it for small images or for small areas like this flower here, where I can just colour in 1 petal at a time. Don't get disheartened that when you first use blender pens that you don't get the quite consistency or the look that you're after. It does take practice. So just keep trying. Soon you'll fall in love and you'll be like, oh, I want to blender pen everything. So just practice, just be patient with it. Now, if for some reason you don't get enough colour on your image, wait for it to dry first, and then you can go back over it and colour over that again and blend it in a bit more. So now you can see what that looks like now that I've finished. And to clean my marker, I've just got a scrap piece of paper here, and I'm just going to run it back and forth until that runs clear again. And now it's ready for me to pick up my next colour. So now that I've got all of those done, here are my images, and all I've done here is the middle section here. I'm just going to cut these out. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut this one out, and I'm going to cut this out as close to the line as possible. So now you can see what that looks like. Now for my next image that I've got here, I want to cut out this inside part here. So once again, I want to cut as close in to those lines as possible. Okay, when you finish cutting it out, you're going to look like this, so that way then you will be able to eventually, we'll be layering these. So we can set those aside for the time being. Now what I have next is I've got some scrap pieces here of some garden green cardstock, and I also have with me the Flower Frenzy die, and I actually want these leaves here. So I want 2 sets, so I'm just going to run these through my Big Shot. So to make my sandwich, I've put my plate down along with my die, then my cardstock, and then another plate on top again, and then I run that through my Big Shot. So I'll be back once I've done that. So now I've got those, and I will set that aside. So the next thing here is I've got a piece of painted Blooms designer paper. that measures 14.3 by 2.5 centimeters, and a piece of Blackberry satin ribbon that measures 35 centimeters. So what I want to do is I want to create a ruffle. So I'm using my sticky strip, and I'm going to place this down the center of my designer paper there. Trim off the edges. So I'm just going to peel this back. I'm going to put this down on one end, and I want to create a pleat. So to do that, I've got my glue dots. So I'm just going to add a glue dot and pleat that and fold that back. Add another glue dot. I want about 5 pleats. So I'm just going to cut off the end here, and I'm going to fold that over to the other side. And stick that over like that. Now it's time. Okay, it's time to assemble our card. So here's our Blackberry Bliss card base that we created earlier. And then I'm going to stick on top of that my Blushing Bride 14.5 by 10 centimeters. And I'm just going to leave equal borders around the edge. Stick that down. Then I have a piece of Painted Blooms designer paper that's found in our Occasions catalogue. This measures 14.3 by 9.8 centimeters, and I'm just going to center and stick this, leaving equal borders around the outside again. Then I have with me a piece of 14.3 by 9.8 piece of vellum. And now I'm just going to stick this, I'm going to put my snail adhesive, and I'm just going to run this down the center of my vellum, and I'm going to stick this over the top of my designer paper. Now the reason we're doing this is to soften that designer paper because it was quite bold and bright, so we're just going to soften it a bit. Now one thing with vellum is you may sometimes see the adhesive through it, so that's why I've only put the adhesive down the center, and so that we can then now hide it using our strip of our pleated ribbon that we've just done. So I'm just going to stick this in the center over the top of our where we've put that adhesive. So we've got my leaves here, so I'm just going to cut the ends off here to create 4 leaves. And I'm just going to place these where I might want these stuck down at. And I'm going to use my multi-purpose liquid glue to stick these down. So I'm just going to add a bit of glue. And then I've got my flower here, and I've just put some Stampin' Dimensionals on the back, and that's going to go over the top. And then I'm layering this up. So this piece goes, can't find it. Goes here. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. And then I'm dimensioning the center bit as well. So it's always a tricky part, trying to figure out where it goes. And there we finished. That's our card for today. Thanks for watching.